Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Scarlet Letter. By Nathaniel Hawthorne. The sad love story The Scarlet Letter takes place in Boston, Massachusetts, during the Puritan colonization in the year 1700. Around 200 years later, a stack of papers was discovered in the attic of a custom house in Salem, Massachusetts. The book is wrapped in cloth with a crimson letter A embroidered on it, and the narrator, an unidentified person, is about to lose his job as a custom house worker when he discovers it. He makes the decision to construct a fictional novel on what he discovered after quitting his job. The protagonist of the tale is Hester Prynne, a young lady dispatched to Salem before her old husband to take care of home duties and wait for him to arrive. The residents in the town soon learn she is pregnant. Given that he hasn't shown up and is presumably at sea lost, it is clear that the child is not her husband's. Hester is publicly humiliated and urged to confess her lover. When she refuses, she is exiled to a cottage on the fringes of the community. Pearl, her young daughter, is raised there and is a bit wild and headstrong. By performing nice things and showing repentance, Hester starts to regain some of her reputation in the neighborhood. All of her attire must have a big scarlet sewn on it to identify her as an adulterer. The settlement's minister has become unwell in the interim. Arthur Dimmesdale is a clergyman who is young and articulate. He has assisted Hester in preventing the town residents from removing her child from her care. Roger Chillingworth, a retired doctor, is standing by the sidelines observing all that is going on. Later, the reader learns that he is Hester's husband, who was purportedly lost at sea. Hester is the only person who is aware of this. He continues tormenting her throughout the narrative in an effort to exact revenge on her and learn who her lover was. He suspects the minister, so when he becomes sicker, a doctor named Chillingworth moves in with him to find out the truth. It is clear that Dimmesdale is being tormented, and Chillingworth finds immense satisfaction when he discovers a mark inscribed on Dimmesdale's chest during an extremely severe illness. With Chillingworth adding to it, Dimmesdale discovers new ways to torture himself both physically and mentally. Hester visits Chillingworth to plead with him to end the suffering after observing the minister's health deteriorating so drastically. He declines. She threatens to reveal Chillingworth's true identity to Dimmesdale. To persuade Dimmesdale to leave with her to Europe so they can raise their daughter together, she meets with him. But Chillingworth learns of their scheme and makes a reservation on the same ship. Dimmesdale leads his lover and daughter back up onto the scaffold after giving one of his best sermons to date. He then climbs next to them, exposing the mark on his breast and confessing his crimes. Then, in a terrible scenario, he collapses and dies next to her. Chillingworth loses his ability to exact further retribution and passes away a year later. Hester and Pearl depart Boston for an unspecified location. But Hester goes back to the cabin years later. Hester keeps up her good actions and humanitarian work until her peaceful death, and Pearl writes to her to update her on her great life as an aristocrat's wife in Europe. She is interred adjacent to Dimmesdale, whose gravestone also features a red A. In the opening scene of Scarlet Letter, an unnamed customs employee finds a manuscript that is wrapped in a scarlet linen with a gold letter A stitched on it. The customs official is a young man working alongside crooked old men who have long been in charge of collecting taxes from incoming cargo. He feels out of place and can identify with the tale of Hester Prynne, a young mother who was shunned by her community as a result of the Puritans' judgments. Another customs agent, Jonathan Pugh, wrote the manuscript 100 years earlier. It tells the tale of an event that took place a century before Pugh's time. Although the narrator is motivated to write the story, he is hesitant to do so because his Puritan ancestors would view it as a pointless activity. However, he chooses to create a fictional narrative of Hester Prynne after losing his position as a result of a shift in the leadership of the government. He is aware that while it won't be entirely accurate, it will be authentic to the love tale as a whole. Following the introduction, the narrative starts in a prison. No matter how well-intentioned a colony may be, the first structures built there are a cemetery and a prison. There is only one rose bush growing outside the prison, which is a dark and foreboding location. This, in the narrator's opinion, is a metaphor for nature's generosity for the doomed. A young woman is soon dragged through the large door. She is holding a baby close to her chest. Her dress has a large red and gold embroidered letter A on the chest. She is escorted to a platform amid taunts and jeers from the locals. We find out that the letter refers to her adulterer offense. She considers her life to this point as she stands on the platform, or scaffold. She recalls her parents, who lived in a little English village, as well as the elderly, deranged man she wed and followed to continental Europe. But when she once more realizes with disbelief where she is, She gives the baby a little strong grip, which makes it wail. Hester recognizes her husband in the audience while she is on the scaffold and she is standing. He wears clothing that is both English and Native American in style. Although he is older, he also appears wiser in her eyes. He then motions for her not to recognize him. Hester has another more secret to guard. Already, she is reluctant to reveal who her baby's father is. She claims that the child won't know an earthly father, only a father in heaven. Her husband is informed that she was staying with the man in Amsterdam while waiting for her husband to wrap up his business when he asks a man nearby what her offense is. She accompanied the man when he arrived in the colonies. Although he was supposed to, her husband never did. They think he became lost at sea. She is sentenced to 3 hours on the scaffold and a lifetime of donning the red A on her chest. She then waits quietly on the scaffold as one of the 3 preachers who serve as the court's judges preaches. She is then escorted back into custody. Her husband, Roger Chillingworth, pays her visits while she is incarcerated. He promises the jailer he would take care of her health issues and get a confession from her. She initially rejects his medicine because she believes he has come to poison her, but he assures her that his retaliation would take much longer. In order to punish the father as well, he first needs to identify him. She declines to inform him and refers to him as the black man instead. He'll seduce her into making a deal that will doom her forever. As part of his retaliation, he instructs her not to reveal him to the residents of the town. Hester is released from prison after a period of time. She is given the chance to leave Boston, but she chooses to move into a deserted cabin on a desolate piece of property. She is able to make a livelihood there doing needlepoint. The Puritan-leaning residents of the town employ her needlework skills and aesthetic eye for beauty for part of their official clothing. She is capable of making christening dresses, burial shrouds, and formal town official robes. However, because of her position, she is not permitted to work on bridal attire. She must display the A as a warning to everyone who sees her and is despised by everyone, including those she aids. With the exception of Pearl, her daughter, she is alone. She gave birth to her and gave all to give her the name Pearl. However, Pearl is occasionally her mother's greatest nightmare. She frequently acts out because she believes she is being punished alongside her mother and hears herself being called an imp of evil. She consistently claims that she has no heavenly parent when Hester tries to educate her about God. Hester often worries about her daughter because she recognizes in her her own passions, moodiness, and stubbornness. Since the kids in the town avoid Pearl, she engages in constant mischief and invents pretend playmates. The Scarlet Letter fascinates Pearl, who frequently torments her mother with it. Hester visits the governor to plead with him not to remove her kid after learning that the villagers and governor intend to take Pearl from her because they believe she might be a demon child and harm Hester or, if a human child, that she should be given to a better parent. When they run into some nasty kids on the way, Pearl loses her cool. She has just turned 3. She meets with the mayor, Reverend Dimsdale, and her estranged husband Chillingworth while there. They start to believe that it would be best if Pearl were removed from Hester after questioning her about religious doctrine and not receiving the desired responses. Hester begs Dimsdale to represent her by speaking up. He persuades the men to let her retain her daughter by his eloquence. Chillingworth is furious, especially after observing that Dimsdale is the only man Pearl seems to connect with. He requests that the men resume their hunt for the baby's father. But they resist, claiming that God will make it known when it is right. The governor's sister stops Hester as she exits the mansion and urges her to attend the witches' meeting that evening. Hester claims that she wouldn't have gone if she had lost her kid, but because she still has her, she won't be going. The storyteller thus demonstrates how Pearl delivered Hester from the grip of the devil. The revered preacher of the village, Dimsdale, starts to get worse as time goes on. They believe he has cardiac issues because he is always observed grasping at his chest. Chillingworth offers to live permanently with the minister in order to discover a cure because he has established himself as a doctor who specializes in herbal treatments as a result of the time he spent with the Native Americans after being captured by them. Chillingworth's room is set up like an evil lab, and Dimsdale's room includes tapestries depicting the evils of adultery. The two have lengthy discussions regarding sin and its impact on one's health. One day Dimsdale queries the doctor about a specific herb he has picked. He explains that it was taken from the tomb of a sinner who had not repented. The plant became black because of the person's unconfessed crimes. They can see Pearl dancing in the cemetery and throwing burrs at the A on her mother's chest as they are conversing. She pulls her mother away from the black man, who is actually the devil, when she spots them. Even though Dimsdale tries to hide his love in Hester, Hester wears her vice for everyone to see, according to Chillingworth, and is aware of it. Chillingworth makes the decision to examine Dimmesdale's chest when he is dozing. He notices something there that brings him joy, but the reader doesn't realize what it is until much later. The locals are first pleased that Chillingworth has come in to assist the minister, but they quickly observe that Chillingworth's countenance is changing into something that seems demonic. Dimmesdale is aware that Chillingworth is tormenting him, but he is unable to identify how. He therefore believes he is dreaming. Due to his ongoing self-punishment, he does start to get visions. He fasts, doesn't get any rest, and engages in self-flagellation. He also has extended vigils during which he thinks about his misdeeds. He makes the decision to visit the scaffold where Hester was executed for her sins during one of these vigils. He worries that the locals will hear him shouting to the heavens and wonders what they will think, but those who do hear him assume it is a witch's call. He expects the other minister to notice him when he passes by, but he doesn't. He just got up from the first governor of the settlement's bed of death. However, Pearl responds to his summons and they join him on the scaffold as Hester, who has been asked to work on the death shroud, comes by with her daughter. Pearl invites him to join them the following day to reveal what he has been keeping a secret to everyone, but he declines, saying the moment is not yet appropriate. When she inquires about the appropriate moment, he responds, Judgment Day. Suddenly, a meteor lights up the night sky, creating the shape of the letter A in red. Every time Pearl notices the man lurking in the shadows and keeping an eye on them, they recognize Chillingworth. Hester is questioned by Dimmesdale about who Chillingworth truly is, but Pearl tries to speak for her. As a kind of retaliation for not standing with her and her mother in front of the town, she whispers rubbish into his ear. Chillingworth then arrives to take him down from the scaffold. The best sermon thus far is Reverend Dimmesdale's from the next day. The Reverend is then given a black glove that was discovered on the scaffold. He is aware that it is his, but he never thinks to look for him. All he knows is that the devil took the glove and left it there. They make a comment about the letter A in the night sky, but they assume it is an angel signaling the previous governor's ascension to heaven rather than thinking it had anything to do with Hester and her daughter. Hester is now more widely accepted in society after 7 years. Because of all her nice deeds, they start to think the A stands for ability rather than adulteress. But she starts to lose her energy and becomes into a more lifeless version of who she once was. She and Pearl come across Chillingworth picking herbs at the beach one day. She requests that he cease abusing Dimmesdale. He understands from this that she has now acknowledged he is the father of her child. Chillingworth, who now sees himself as the devil he has become, holds Hester responsible for his transformation from an innocent student to the vengeful and vicious old man he has become. She threatens to divulge Chillingworth's true identity to Dimmesdale. He encourages her to inform him, but their fate is silence and his retaliation. Hester and Pearl head into the forest after leaving Chillingworth in order to meet Dimmesdale, who will be returning this way after seeing the local tribe. When they notice him approaching, Hester sends Pearl off to play while she has a private conversation with him. She reveals to him Chillingworth's true identity. He is initially incensed, but later determines Chillingworth committed the sin. They reaffirm their love for one another and decide to sail away to Europe to start a fresh life apart from the Puritan lifestyle. Hester rips the A from her chest and lets her hair fall because she is so joyful. She and Dimmesdale both start to regain some of their health as a result of letting go of their sin-related problems. To share in their joy and help Pearl get to know her father, they invite her over. Until the letter is changed, the youngster won't go to her mother. Hester pins it back on, and she starts to look less attractive once more. Dimmesdale declines Pearl's request for them to return to the village holding hands. She dismisses him. Dimmesdale returns to his hometown a different man. He informs Chillingworth that he no longer requires his medications since he has a new perspective on the world. Chillingworth questions whether the minister is now aware of his real identity. However, Dimmesdale creates a new sermon for the next holiday that represents his new outlook on life rather than allaying his anxieties. Chillingworth books a passage on the same ship after somehow learning of their plans. Throughout the installation of a new governor, Hester learns this. Dimmesdale will deliver his new sermon on Thanksgiving. She is concerned because Dimmesdale now seems further away than ever due to his improved health and vitality. Even more so with her estranged spouse accompanying her, she is not sure that she made the right choice to depart with him. Chillingworth continues to subject her to his psychological torture, but Dimmesdale appears unaffected. After giving the greatest sermon ever to confess his faults to everyone, he brings Hester and Pearl to the scaffold, where the motive is made obvious. To reveal the mark on his chest, he rips off his vestment. Then he collapses to his death. Pearl ultimately gives him the brow kiss he had requested from her in the forest as he is about to pass away. If they go to heaven together, Hester wonders. He asserts that only God has the authority to make decisions. Chillingworth shouts that they have absconded from his punishments and taken away his wrath. After then, some witnesses claimed that the mark on his chest resembled Hester's, while others claimed that nothing was there. The narrator claims that the latter were primarily Dimmesdale's friends who were attempting to uphold his reputation and demonstrate his compassion for a sinner. Without somebody to despise, Chillingworth begins to deteriorate and eventually perishes with the year. He gives Pearl a sizable bequest. Hester and Pearl soon depart the settlement following that. The Scarlet is legendary after many years. The scaffold and her cabin are preserved by the locals as a memento of the couple. One day Hester comes back to the cabin to end her days, continuing her charity work and donning her red A. Pearl, who is now married to an aristocracy and lives in Europe, writes letters to her mother in Boston. When Hester passes away, she is interred in the King's Chapel graveyard not too far from Dimmesdale because the A has lost its negative connotation. They share a single gravestone marked with a scarlet letter A on a black backdrop even though their graves are not adjacent to one another. Hester Prynne born into a loving family in a little English village. She is attractive, clever, and passionate. Hester regrettably commits the error of wedding a senior scholar. Most likely attracted to him because of his intelligence and desire to explore the new world. Instead of finding the experience she was hoping for, she ends up in the company of a family friend who is a Puritan. She is sent ahead to Boston in anticipation of her spouse, who never shows up. She starts dating the attractive, single clergyman Arthur Dimmesdale while she is alone and in a new town. She gets pregnant, and that's when their affair is exposed. The locals avoid her, especially since she won't identify her partner. He permits her to endure the humiliating public punishments of having to spend 3 hours on the scaffold in the town square while being mocked by Puritans and having to live the rest of her life with a scarlet letter A on her chest. She endures her disgrace and keeps up her good works and assistance to the underprivileged. She earns a pitiful living for herself and her daughter thanks to the rising popularity of her embroidery. She can observe a lot of the town's activities from her perch as the local outcast. Especially how it treats women. Hester's illegitimate daughter is named Pearl. She is a young child, but she sees things that others cannot. She is quite mischievous and wise above her years. She is allegedly the devil's daughter, according to legends perpetuated by the locals. She frequently teases her mother about the letter she is wearing. Whether Pearl is a gift from God or a punishment from the devil is a constant source of confusion for her mother. Roger Chillingworth is Hester Prynne's estranged husband. He loses contact with her after sending her to the colonies while he took care of business in England. He ultimately makes it to Boston after being captured and then freed by Native Americans, arriving in time to watch her on the scaffold holding her unborn child. He pretends to be a doctor by using his education and what he acquired from the Native Americans because he is a scholar. Hester is coerced into keeping his identity a secret by him so that he can get back at her and identify the father. As his need for vengeance grows, his character darkens and turns more vicious. Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale immigrates to Boston to spread the word after becoming well known for his sermons in England. He meets Hester there and they start dating. Even though he never acknowledges paternity and doesn't publicly share her shame, he punishes himself in private. His health starts to suffer as a result of his more harsh punishments. As a result, Chillingworth is allowed to move in with him by the town residents to ensure his ongoing care. Naturally, Chillingworth sees this as an opportunity to intensify the psychological abuse he inflicts on Dimmesdale, especially since he starts to believe Hester may also be responsible for the abuse. Despite everything that is going on, Dimmesdale's oratory skills and sermon content are always evolving. Reverend John Wilson, Governor Bellingham and his sister, Mistress Hibbins, the Reverend is old-school Puritan, preaching harsh punishments for sinners. Governor Bellingham is the kind-hearted, fatherly elderly Puritan. His sister, who lives with him, is a practicing witch, although he is unaware of this. The reader is shown the hidden evils each time Mistress Hibbins appears in the narrative. The narrator, a young man who works in Salem, Massachusetts, as a tedious custom house employee. He feels excluded from the more seasoned, dishonest individuals who have held this position for years. He thus travels about the building learning about it. The manuscript on which this book is based is discovered by him as he is looking around the attic. He waits to start writing because he wants to be a writer but doesn't think it's a legitimate career until after he loses his job due to changes in the government following the election of a new president. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.